When we're talking about real life data, we're usually going to be talking about large data sets, large populations, ideally large samples. And when we're working by hand, we really prefer to stick to small data sets. So we might look at a small set like these 30 values. These data represent the heights of 30 12-year-olds in centimeters. Now, you might feel like 30 is kind of a big data set, and it would be if, for example, you wanted to calculate your standard deviation by hand. But 30 is a pretty small data set if we want to say something about all 12-year-olds. We can do some basic analysis on this data set, though. One of the things we might do is build a grouped frequency distribution. We want a grouped distribution because let's see what values we have represented here. Let's see. It looks like the smallest number is 134. Is anything less than that? No. And the largest value? I think it's this 168. Is there anything more than 168? No. So the numbers that might show up here are the numbers from 134 to 168. So that's 168 minus 134 plus 1. This will give us a count of how many different numbers might show up here. In this case, 35. We've got 35 different values possible. We only have 30 actual numbers. We would like to group those together just so that we can see some overall patterns. I'm going to choose to have 5 groups. So I want 35 divided by 5 is 7 numbers per group. My first group is going to be the numbers 134 up to 135, 30, up to, let's see, I want 134, 135, 136, that's 3 numbers, 137, 138, 139, that's 6 numbers, 140. To get 7 numbers in the group, I want the numbers from 134 up to 140. And then the next group is going to start at 141. Well, to get the end of this group, I added 6. So I'm going to add another 6, 147. And then 148 to add 6 is 154. And then 155 to add 6 is 161. 162, add 6, we get 168. All right, so those are those 35 numbers divided evenly. And then we can count how many are in each group. So in our 134 to 140 group, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 values in that first group. I'm going to pause recording and finish counting the rest of the groups. If you'd like to count as well and see if your counts match mine, pause the video and finish your counts. So this is what I get. I get 7 in the first group, 8 in the second, 8 in the third, 4 in the fourth, and 3 in the fifth. One of the big things we want to do with something like that is construct what we call a grouped frequency histogram, which for these values is going to look like this. I have a horizontal axis, and a vertical axis. On my vertical axis, I'm going to count the frequency, and I'm going to count by 2s just for the sake of space. And on the horizontal axis, I'm going to say height in centimeters, and I'm going to label the left ends of my groups for reasons that are unlikely to become clear at the moment. The left end of the next group would be 169. So that's what I'm actually going to label. And those look like they're meant to be evenly spaced. And now, for each of these, I'm going to make a vertical bar going to their frequency. And when I do that, I'm going to make sure to draw my bars touching. And I'm going to shade this in. We met these guys in our first class. This is a frequency histogram. And looking at this frequency histogram, we see that it has some sort of a shape. It has kind of a peak here, and then it kind of tails off over here. But we had a pretty small data set. We made a pretty small number of groups. And as a result, our picture is pretty small. Let's take a look at a picture that's drawn with some bigger samples. Here, I've done the same thing with 200 heights and 9 bars, 9 classes. And here's the same thing again, except done with 500 heights and 9 classes. And the thing that you see is that as we have more and more data, we get these kind of smooth shapes emerging. And the shape that we see emerging in these graphs looks kind of something like this. It looks like some sort of a smooth, bell-shaped curve. And those sorts of curves that you see emerging with large data sets are what we're going to talk about in the next video.